going on with your voice?
I've got a call.
This is the Hell Island Reports podcast, talking to groups and their organisers on the front lines of the fight for trans rights in the United Kingdom. I'm Kay, and this episode I talked to A from the affinity group Trans Liberation Cambridge. Now, before we begin, on the 20th of July, there was a demo at Westminster Magistrates Court in solidarity with political prisoner Sarah Jane Baker, and there'll likely be more demos against her imprisonment, so do keep your eyes peeled for more details. Trans Liberation Front Bristol are co-hosting a fundraiser for themselves and Trans Safety Network with Bristol Anarchist Federation, with drag and music including musician Evan Greer at the Exchange on the 28th of August. Now on to Trans Liberation Cambridge.
So, Trans Liberation Cambridge, first of all, it's an affinity group. And just to give a small, short definition for people who might not know what an affinity group is. So, an affinity group is a group of people who come together to organize or campaign on a specific issue. And this kind of group might often exist in a wider network of activists. They could be, members of this group could be from multiple different groups, or it could be a subset of a larger group. And the point of having this affinity group is to facilitate these people to work together, either to change something, either in a wider group they're part of, or in wider society. And what TLC does more or less is we organize or promote protests and actions. We do community building, which includes things like, for example, the clothes swaps that TLC has been doing for a while now, the open mic nights, social events. We also monitor local anti-trans people, so to speak, including to prevent local institutional capture. We also do solidarity and support for student actions and solidarity and support for some of the London actions, like, for example, Honor Oak or the happenings with Posey Parker.
You talk about monitoring in Cambridge. What is the situation like in Cambridge? I mean, with the university, but also just generally in the town. So
the thing is with Cambridge, I think I've heard it from some of trade union pals some good years ago. Some of them described Cambridge as being the not necessarily the birthplace, but like a stronghold of turfism, they used to call it, because it has a bit of a history when it comes to specific people within politics and or academia that have launched themselves on a platform of either concerns or anti-trans hate. For example, Anne Sinnott used to be a Cambridge councillor that resigned after the council renewed basically a fair equality policy around the use of gendered facilities by trans people, the use of the specific facilities of their gender, and she kind of resigned in protest over the inclusive policy that up till then was no problem at all for mostly no one. She then went on to co-found the LGB Alliance, which is quite interesting, seeing that she is a married straight woman, but, I guess things like that do happen. And, I mean, there's other people in groups who have, who like, for example, because Cambridge University and it is quite a place of renown. There's people that do like things like, coming here to do certain talks. Like, for example, Kathleen Stock came to have at the Cambridge Debate or Free Speech Union. I don't know what the full name of it is. It's called Cambridge Union, I think, in short. It's sort of like a debate society. So we did organize with students supporting for that one to do a protest, basically to show that, expressing both sides' views when it comes to trans people is really not an okay thing to do, basically. Other things that have happened, I mean, there has been, like, for a while, there was this thing called the Respect My Sex campaign, or Respect My Sex If You Want My Ex, which sounds weird when you say it. I think it makes more sense when it's written. This was a group formed between the group Sex Matters, founded by Maya Forstarter, the Women's Rights Network, which is a countrywide, let's say, mid-level activism group trying to push like gender-critical anti-trans narratives, and another group called Women Uniting, which was a cross-party group trying to do the similar thing, and it was basically, that was between like different people from different political parties, including Labour, Conservatives, Greens, and so on. People who in their particular party may not have been happy that, let's say, their political party wasn't necessarily at the time pushing for anti-trans narratives. And they formed this campaign to pressure or at least sort of like publicly highlight, like either to pressure politicians into giving into their narrative, or then to seem as if more people agreed with them, and or to highlight the politicians that already agreed with their narrative. And what at the time TLC did was to counter that by first and foremost, well, in sending questions to our local councillors or candidates for council, and simply asking them basically about their support for trans rights. And then, of course, publishing that so everyone who wants to vote can know what their councillor thinks about trans rights. Mm. Not pressuring, of course, because no one can pressure no one should be pressuring a local politician into doing one thing or another. Mm. But we should know what the people we vote for think and want to do. And in my opinion, that was quite a good action that TLC did, because we showed very well that the vast majority of the local councillors were either indifferent or supportive of trans rights, thus reassuring trans people and allies within Cambridge that they can safely vote for someone that will not take their rights away, or try to that might lead to indignity towards trans people. And in the process, it caused a lot of those who were in that Respect My Sex campaign to, well, first of all, lose steam and morale, because they saw very well that none of them were supportive of their narrative. One single candidate was, but that was insufficient to actually, well, gain anything, and that person actually didn't get any support. Funny enough, the funniest thing to me was when we got the results of the census, and it turned out that the ward in which that candidate was in had more trans people than the votes the candidate got.
So a lot of that...
At least statistically speaking, but yeah.
So do you think a lot of the, you called it a stronghold of turfism, but then does a lot of that, academic turfism not really transfer over into, community in Cambridge? Is there a divide between, people coming in and doing debates and talks, giving, very gender-critical ideas, but then actually in the town itself, it's a lot more chill than that?
Yeah, I mean... the thing is, I personally didn't call it a stronghold of turfism. Rather, I've heard that it being called by some pals who have been here for a long, long time. Mm. And you are right in that there's that veneer of okay, this is a majority opinion. They come here and they start doing these academic debates, and they want to position themselves as being the common sense position, when you are very, very much right. Most people in town I would say, would not have an opinion to start with when it comes to trans people in general. And in my experience, most people, if they do have an opinion, it tends to be like neutral to positive. Like very few people share those like very specific ideological points that people who align themselves with, let's say, gender critical transphobia. Very few people have those ideological points in mind.
Have you seen a shift in Cambridge and like with the current panic around trans people? Has there been like a shift in Cambridge around those views, or is it still most people are quite neutral on the issue?
Honestly, I think most of the changes that happen to people's attitudes don't necessarily come from the academics. They mostly influence the people in the higher strata of society. So, for example, Kathleen Stock or even Helen Joyce, and I'll be coming back to the Helen Joyce bit in a bit, talking either in, let's say, a big paper or writing, fancy articles, or even coming to have talks with other people who go to these kind of debates, because most people won't go. Actually, most people won't even have money to have membership to, let's say, the Cambridge Debate Union, right? So your average person from Cambridge doesn't tend to listen to these kind of things. Rather, most people will be influenced by rag newspapers like the Daily Mail, and even other kinds of newspapers, because even the Cambridge Independent, for example, has at one time published a more, let's call it a trans-skeptical article. Those kind of things tend to influence people rather than these kind of debates. It's rather the more like down-to-earth news and tabloids. And if there has been a slight change in attitudes, I'd say, over the years from my personal experience. I think but I think it's mostly the people who already were hateful to start with have been emboldened to show it more visibly. And I think some people have been scared away from being allies, because sometimes allies do get hate, and sometimes people, if they're not invested enough in being allies, they will feel the brunt of, let's say, they stop losing the sight of, why are they allies? Because they're getting hate and they don't really understand, what they're achieving. So they kind of stop being as vocal. Because if you remember, like a couple of years ago, everyone used to do that thing where they would put pronouns in their bio and in their emails and on like accounts at work. And then, well, I don't know if that's necessarily the most strongest allyship, but that was something. And then people kind of slowly started to remove those, because they just wanted to be a bit more quiet about it. Which is, at the end of the day, that's slightly sad, because those people who may not be strong allies, but like they were not hateful people. They didn't hold those ideological views that gender critical people do, for example, or even far right people. There's a big overlap there that even far right people do, but they're driven to not be as vocal, that they're just okay with trans people, and then they feel it feels as if there's less people who are just okay, even though most of them would not have changed their opinions, that they don't have a lot of opinions about trans people to start with. So coming back to that, I guess academians coming, because I mentioned Helen Joyce. We did, so this one was in collaboration with the student union. And basically what we did is, because this is what's called diversity of tactics. Whilst the student union would not be able to do things like, for example, to cause more severe disruption, nothing stops us from doing that. So some of us being louder, we're allowed to do that because we are just town. The student union isn't able to do that, so then they're able to bring numbers and make sure people's safety, and we're able to be the loud people. Some of us actually attended Helen Joyce's talk at the time for a combination of reasons, including to assess the situation of what exactly is this, right? Because sometimes you get, even if there's recordings, you might get snipped parts. You might not get the context of how many people are actually attending these events, what kind of people are attending, what's the chat about, because anything that's recorded intentionally, tends to be picked and sanitized. I mean, I would, if I wanted to do a PR for a group or a company, I wouldn't, just randomly record myself saying things about it. I would pick, a time and a place, and I would pick the topics I'd want to discuss. One of the surprises that I had listening to let's say, what was happening in the room, so to speak, was because it was framed as if it was a debate, but the format was more or less that of an interview, and actually I'd say more or less of a book club, because the majority of people who attended were people who already either agreed with Helen Joyce or very much held the same views. So some of the local transphobes, a small number of students that strongly agreed with Joyce, and a few, I guess, academics who were interested in making and networking. And the thing that surprised me about listening to Helen Joyce was how much more hateful she sounded in person than in writing. I think because she doesn't really have, I don't know if to call it media training, or like, she's not very good in interviews in controlling what information she gives. And she just talks very honestly, which is a disadvantage to her, because hate basically comes very transparently out of the way she speaks. Part of what shocked me was how she very transparently kind of stated that she was annoyed that she couldn't talk about in bigoted ways about trans people, and now she's so happy that she found a way to do that.
That's a lovely thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it was quite shocking to put that together, listening to her and understanding. Wait, so this is just like a kid who finds a naughty word and then is so happy that this kid, the kid can just say these naughty words somewhere and won't get in trouble. And it's because she was talking about how she introduced the concept of how ostracism is death, and how basically she feels that if she can't say what she wants to say, that feels like ostracism, and therefore it's like being given a death sentence or something like that, which was just out there, just big brain stuff. I don't know. It was surreal to listen to that. And honestly, I don't recommend to anyone to subject themselves to that, because I did not have a good time listening to her words, honestly.
No, it's always interesting. It's always interesting going in person to something and then hearing which bits they leave out when they later put it on YouTube or something, on Twitter. Seeing the selected 1 minute clips on Twitter, and then you go and it's so much more insane. And
the thing is, right, because I wanted to, one of my original intentions was that I want to write down, because there was a bit of a questions and answers, and I wanted to ask her some questions to clarify things that I thought, would at least show to the rest of the public some level of, okay, so this is her real opinion on this. But as I was writing things on a notepad, trying to formulate, okay, she said this, I want to ask about this, I realized that she was going from topic to topic that was semi-unrelated. Like, for example, when she suddenly started talking about pedophilia in the middle of all of this, which was quite a shift of topic. Like, she started talking about trans people. She just inserted that she doesn't think, she's never said that trans people are pedophiles, but then she talks for 10 minutes about pedophilia. And one of her points was that apparently, at least to her, from her recount of history, it was when with gay liberation, it was difficult to actually point out the abusers or pedophiles because it wasn't PC to talk about gay pedophiles or something like that. And thing is, right, I had just previous week or the week before, I had just read Al-Karim Jivani's book, It's Not Unusual, A Gay and Lesbian History of Britain. And I do not recall reading the entire book, any talk there about how much of a problem political correctness was back in the days when it comes to pointing out abusers or something like that. It was just shocking to hear this thing that she was trying to construct. But what she's basically trying to say is that she should be allowed to just point at trans people and say groomer or pedophile or whatever, because because basically she thinks that the PC culture won't allow you to point at actual abusers when it's really, really not the truth.
I mean, we keep seeing that strategy from a lot of gender critical people of just sort of throwing everything out in an argument and just talking about violence against women and pedophilia and stuff like that. And then they just throw everything at the wall and you listen and you're not quite sure what you can say about any of it because where do you even start?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a strategy. So calling your opponent a groomer or abuser or pedophile when, well, obviously they're not, is a very good strategy because it pulls on specific heartstrings, especially in the UK with the very specific cultural sensitivities around child abuse. When I say this, I mean specific things that have happened and or the way the public approaches these topics.
Yeah, I mean, really the easiest way to insult someone is just call them Jimmy Savile, and then...
Yep.
Yeah. On Helen Joyce's book club, what was the action outside the... Because it was reported quite widely, especially in places like the Daily Mail, about the masked protesters outside. For TLC, what was that action like?
It was... I mean, I would call it standard demo stuff, chants, making the noise, making sure they hear us inside. Because, that's the thing as well. If a demo isn't heard, if you are only talking to the people in your own demo, it's not really a demo, right? At the end of the day. If you were to hold a protest in a forest where you would hold speeches to each other, it wouldn't really be a protest. It would just be a party. The effectiveness of a demonstration or protest is that particular people or even a lot of people, will hear you. Disruption is important. So noise was one of the things. Being as close as possible to where this was being held so they can very well hear us, banging pots and pans, chanting, all the fun stuff.
And do you think you were heard in the actually inside the debate hall?
Yes, I think that actually on the recording it might be audible quite a few times when specific pots and pans were being banged. And I think actually, if I remember correctly, Helen Joyce kind of paused at one point because it was getting very loud. So I would say that was effective enough in at least putting that message across of, we know you're here, we know what you're saying, and just so you know, we don't agree. So you can't just come and saying to say these things and just not be challenged, basically. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, right, because the general vibe I get from these kind of events is they always say, oh, well, we invite people to actually have a healthy debate and, have a discussion, all these things. But the thing is, right, there was, from the start, the first thing that was said, because they probably saw some queer people that were in the room, and they said, oh, if you're just here to wave trans flags, then you might as well leave. And, when you start with those kind of things of, oh, if this is your political opinion, please leave, then, it's not really you're not really inviting people to discuss in any way. Second of all, inviting someone to discuss when the rhetoric is very caustic, especially, towards a minority group, it's not really something most people can and would do. It's a difficult situation to put oneself, to discuss when your identity and existence are under attack. To some people, it may be a theoretical discussion, but to trans people, it isn't, because you are the target of that rhetoric. You can imagine, trying to talk in front of a ton of people, and your opponent insists that, well, the debate of the topic is whether or not you are a groomer, and you are the one being under attack. Your opponent doesn't get that kind of flack. Your opponent just gets to freely make assumptions and use hyperbole and tug on heartstrings and what they call common sense to paint you as someone who is to be feared, and as someone who is doing things wrong just for existing. You know what's funny? The person who organized that, what's his name? Ahmed, because he was just appointed to an HRC position some time ago. So she was invited by Arif Ahmed, a fellow of Gonville and Chaos. So this is public knowledge, by the way. So yeah, Professor Arif Ahmed, fellow of Gonville and Chaos, hosted the talk. And later on, I think he got appointed to a position within the HRC. And then later on, there was discussions about appointing him as some sort of like free speech czar by one of the, was it the education ministry or something like that? So basically, you might see hear a pattern where someone launches themselves in this kind of career of, okay, I'm the one who actually opens up the talk, the discussions. I'm not saying, I'm with one position or the other. I'm just facilitating a discussion, and then gets appointed to this and that position, and launches themselves into, a kind of career, basically.
Arif Ahmed is now a commissioner for the HRC after being appointed by Kemi Badenoch earlier in 2023, and in June of 2023 he was appointed as the Director for Freedom of Speech and Academic Freedom at the Office for Students.
The funny thing about all of these ones, right, because so all of these ones that we did in collaboration with the student union, I would say, this kind of collaboration was very flexible in that either we organized and, they came to our kind of thing, and we of course we did it as a joint venture, so to speak, or they organized and we also brought our numbers and helped with stewarding and so on. So we kind of like flexibly organized between the two groups. The funny thing is, a lot of the times when it was covered, or when specific anti-trans actors would talk about us, when I say us, I mean us and the students, they would always label the entire group of protesting people as students, young students specifically, even when it came to the people who were in the room, by the way, listening to, or the last time when the walkout was being done, we were labeled as being like very young people or students. But TLC has members all the way from students age to like 40s. And we're all active in organizing and doing stuff. But there's a narrative there that's trying to be struck of, because there's a specific narrative like the privileged young student who doesn't understand the world and is just just having a tantrum, because this is a often used word for people who do activism for trans rights, that we're throwing tantrums. It's a form of infantilization to basically suggest that we have no understanding of what we're actually doing, that we're just being offended snowflakes, to use an old internet term. And that also this is just the students, that it doesn't concern the working class people of Cambridge, even though some of the TLC, if not quite a lot, are working class. It was and always will be a town and gown action, because it concerns everyone in Cambridge. It's frankly insulting to hear this level of infantilization, that even the students wouldn't know what they're protesting, or to assume whether or not the students protesting are privileged or not. It's frankly insulting. But they use this narrative to delegitimize our position.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's quite a wide narrative. I mean, you even see that narrative with ecological protests, Just Up Oil, where
yes.
it's students and even teenagers who are out there doing shit that adults don't, and then they just get slated in the Daily Mail for these kids don't even know what they're on about, whereas it's sort of their futures and everyone's futures that they're doing this for, but they just get swept under the rug for, as you say, throwing a tantrum rather than They have
the irony of it is, I think you might have seen that action done by, was it in Oxford?
Yes.
Against Kathleen Stock, where a protester glued themselves to the ground in front of her, and didn't do anything else, just stood there as a sign of defiance, basically. And they absolutely got infantilized in the worst way possible. And when they found out that this person was related to a climate activist, I think, they definitely used that a lot. But the thing is, right, when it comes to demos, especially those kind of demos where your face will start, appearing, let's say, in the newspaper, some people use the fact that they have, let's say, more privilege or less disadvantage than other people within their affinity group to do demos. That's kind of the point. The people who are already at a massive disadvantage shouldn't be the people who should do these kind of actions, because they put themselves at risk, right? You wouldn't want to force people who suffer racism to do anti-racist action. You wouldn't say, why aren't they doing it? You wouldn't want to force them to be the ones exclusively doing it. You'd want people who also, allies, to also do, or more privileged people to also do that action, because they wouldn't suffer, let's say, from actual racists trying to harm them as much. You would use that privilege as a shield, because otherwise, if we would only fight for our own personal let's say, we only fight our own personal oppression, then we'd end up, first of all, not getting a lot done, because, when you're a minority, it's kind of harder to fight. Second of all, we would achieve nothing on a larger scale. The only way to achieve change is through strong allyship and intersectionality, and understanding where the strengths lie and when you can balance people's disadvantages and people's strengths or privileges. Of course, that person took upon themselves to do that because they knew they might suffer less than someone who, let's say, was already in a much, much less privileged position and would get a lot more flack, if they did it.
I mean, we've talked a lot about TLC's demo actions. I mean, you recently had an open mic night if you want to like just talk briefly about that and how that went, and like what other causes and actions TLC take on.
Well, community building, I would say community building is a very important aspect, because at the end of the day, you may organize as many demos as you want, you might do direct action, but if you don't have any place to come home to, any community to, feel safe in, you don't have anywhere to recharge. And also community building creates resilience. Some of the things we do, well, I mean, like you mentioned, and like I mentioned, open mic nights, and I'd say those go quite well. Everything from spoken word poetry to just singing, DJing, synths. All sorts of people come to it, and it's great to see like just this mix of people that like our events. We also did and should do one maybe next month, a clothes swap. This is more or less, we've got like a we in combination with some other groups, we've got some we get donated clothes, and then people can either donate some of their wardrobe and get some back. People seem really to appreciate this kind of thing. Imagine it like a sort of like a thrift store, but without necessarily having to pay anything. You just come with the clothes you don't need, and then take some that you might feel you need better. Someone else might need yours better than you do, and the other way around. We've also been in, organized with other groups, events for the Trans Day of Remembrance. And unfortunately had to organize the vigil for Brianna J. We thought it was important to hold this also as a wake-up call to our allies, and also to every single trans person in Cambridge, that we should be looking towards taking steps towards building community and resisting what's happening, because else these kind of things happen. I was moved by the number of people that attended the Cambridge one. I didn't expect like more than, 30, 40 people to attend at best. But there were hundreds. I was quite surprised when people kept pouring in, and we didn't really know where to put everyone, so to speak. But yeah, it was quite moving to see the number of people coming. People spoke that have never held a mic in their hands in their entire life. They specifically came because they said they wanted to, it's a now or never situation, where either they want to, now they want to get involved and do things. They don't want to just, stay in the closet forever and be afraid. Because that's the thing as well. People seeing other people being supportive and caring matters. When you don't have community, you are pushed into the closet, and you do feel like the entire world is against you. And even if the entire world statistically would be against you, let's say, having that community next to you makes you feel like you can fight the world, that you're not alone. It's the worst thing in this world is to be alone.
Yeah, no, the outpouring around the vigils for Brianna was very moving. Like, yeah, like I went down to the one in London, and like just the amount of people there, that was like, as much as like, you wake up in the morning and see all the shit on Twitter, like just seeing that, like an entire street filled with like hundreds of people.
Yep. Yeah, that's and it's a hard one as well, right? Because creating community is, the phrase itself is vague. I keep it intentionally vague, because a lot of things can mean building community. Anything, including like holding a weekly coffee, and we do have members that do that kind of thing, and to other groups, they have like a weekly coffee meet. that is also community building. You find people that you vibe with, and you have a place where you can spend time and feel included in, and from there you can build that network of people that when you need to do something, you can do something with.
So, what is TLC doing now?
So let's see. We are planning to start with more of those social activities. The closed swap is primarily one we thought about because last time we had one, and it was a great success in gathering people, and especially gathering people in a relaxed environment where we can start thinking about, we could meet and do this. Like, for example, arts and crafts. We've done that at one point. Making banners or just making badges, or small group of people who want to do things like knitting. We did that as well at one point. But it's important to see what people would like to do, and from there kind of organize. And it's also easier to do that when you're in a more relaxed environment, like the closed swap, compared to if you try to, let's say, network at the demo. Where everyone feels like there's a purpose they have to do now, when it's a difficult environment to actually have that kind of chat with people. Of what else? So we've also been, like I said, supporting and being solidarity with some of the London actions, and we will continue to do that as much as we have the energy to do so. We are hoping that enough groups in London will gather to do. I guess I would call it like a big networking event at one point, so we can find out how many of us are willing to actually put ourselves out there and do something about Cozy. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, follow us, see what events we do. Come and hang around when we have some events.
Thank you for speaking with me.
Not a problem.
And if you ever want to come back on and plug anything else you're doing, that's more than fine. So,
well, thank you very much for having me on, and I appreciate what you're doing, and I'll contact you if there's more.
All right, thank you. Thank you again to A and their comrades from Transliberation Cambridge. They're currently running Queer Radical Self-Defense sessions every Tuesday at 7 p.m, with more details as well as social media handles for all of TLC's stuff in the show notes. Our opening music is Mindbreak.018M by $3.99 on Bandcamp, Newgrounds and Twitter. Links in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Hell Island. More reports soon.